Welcome back. I've got Tracy Lamourie on the line. Tracy, how are you?
Very good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I am great. You're doing some amazing work in the PR space. So tell the audience a little bit about you and this awesome work that you're doing.
Yeah, my name is Tracy Lamourie. I am the CEO, co-founder, senior publicist, media strategist, all that fun stuff at Lamourie Media. Was once called Lamourie Public Relations. We recently incorporated, and it's now Lamourie Media, working primarily out of Hamilton. I'm a Toronto girl here in Canada, but I have clients across the world, really, and I have a lot of clients in Los Angeles. So we were going to be opening and doing more work in LA, and then COVID hit. So I've been saying Toronto to Los Angeles and everywhere in between. As you can see from my socials, that's true.
Yeah. We were talking about it in the pre-show that, the stuff that I'm seeing, and you're on shows in Australia, you've got clients that are being featured and media all over the planet. And it's amazing because we're such a global world. I mean, we've always been, but with the advent of the internet and access, you can have a conversation with somebody that is on the other side of the planet, or like in our situation right now, down the QEW. It's just it's like I can wave. Actually, that's east. I'll wave. There we go. Yeah. So, but it's an interesting game. So why did you go into public relations, and of course, now launch, the media firm? What was the drive for you to get into this industry?
It's funny. I always wanted to be a writer, so PR was never on my agenda or in my realm growing up. I always wanted to be a writer, so now I still hashtag look, ma, I'm a writer whenever I do writing for magazines and stuff. And I am writing a book, Get Repped. But so PR was not a planned trajectory for me. I was always interested in going into radio and that kind of thing, but really, and I guess I was in radio. I was doing college radio in my early 20s with my husband, Dave Parkinson, who's also the chief operating officer of Lamourie Media. But what happened basically is it came more from the activist side of my work. I literally learned how to write a press release without any intention of making it a career. When I was, I think I was a telemarketer in those days, age 28 years old. I was also an activist who'd recently had a radio show. And we just learned about a case of injustice that nobody was really talking about. It was a little small thing we found on the internet of a wrongful conviction case of actual innocence of a guy called Jimmy Dennis on Pennsylvania death row. And we were 28-year-old telemarketers and, early business, in early onset of our business life, and had no way to help this guy or anything like that. But we literally decided, well, since we can't do something, we need to get it out to lawyers or somebody who could help. So I literally, do you remember Alta Vista in the old days, pre-Google? I literally clearly remember writing my first press release, Google or Alta Vistaing, not Googling, how to write a press release for immediate release back in 1999. So my first press release was written literally because I wanted to get the news out about a guy that was innocent on death row that nobody was listening to. We got some media hits, mostly out overseas because it's hard when somebody's still incarcerated to get that kind of attention stateside. End of the story is 2017, he was actually released from death row when the judges, so we were on that case for 20 something years, and the judge finally decided a case of actual innocence and released him. And even further along, he's released some music. And last night, in an epic, thing that I'm still getting my head around, an actual epic thing. He was on a panel talking about race and police accountability in America and other justice issues with some of the biggest hip hop stars in America, like Ja Rule and Vin from Naughty by Nature and that kind of thing. So I always say that story won't end until he has a Grammy, but it's hilarious that when it began, he was on death row. My husband and I were, telemarketers, entry-level business people. 20 years on, somehow I've managed to realize that I was really good at getting things in the media. That's a whole other story between those 2 points, and became a successful publicist. And now he's on death row, or off of death row, and speaking with some of the, on panels with some of the biggest hip hop stars about the issue as an artist. So yeah, life can take you to weird places, and I always say you definitely don't know where you're going to end up, but there's a question that says, do what you love and the money will come. I don't know if that's always true, but for sure, for me, the success and the money or whatever, the things that people look at in awe and, oh, you're so lucky, have come from doing things that nobody else was doing, that other people weren't paying attention to. So that's my
Well,
lesson.
that's an amazing story, and thank you.
Strange
And
one, but
today,
it's a long story.
oh, sure. But thank you, and thank you to Dave for caring.
Thank
You were
you.
28. You could have went, well, that's too bad. But no, you took the effort, and your efforts saved that human being's life from wrongly being taken from him because he was innocent.
And of
That
course, I wanted the lawyers that came in 2 years later as a result of hearing enough buzz about this when they were looking for a case of actual innocence, and then they put, years and years of work into it, and that led to the court decisions. So of course, it wasn't just us, but Jimmy credits us with, when nobody else was listening, making sure people listen. So for that little, I'm honored to have been, a little part of that story because it inspires me every day. And he always says he's a shirt that says never, never, ever give up. And even when he's feeling low because things aren't still perfect, I'll be like, you know what, we didn't get this far. We didn't get this far to only get this far. So that's a good business lesson too. Whatever the deal is, it doesn't have to be that dramatic, but wherever you're at, wherever your challenges are, whatever is bringing you down, did you get this far? Did you wake up another day? Did you pass through everything you've passed through already to get here? To stop at this point, to give up now over this little challenge. So whatever it is,
it's an amazing journey, and it speaks volumes to what good public relations and getting stories out to the right audiences where it will impact them. And from those attorneys seeing this buzz and going, okay, what's this all about, and spending decades, quite frankly, to do this work. Most press releases don't require that much of a follow through afterwards, but
yeah.
but it does create potential for journeys. You think about all the products and services that we know and love today. Those were once a concept. Those were once an idea. Once something that the media put out, or media received some information on this particular product or service. It took traction, and eventually it took off. The infamous 15-year overnight success. And you mentioned something a couple seconds ago about, oh, you're so lucky, or this and this. It's not luck. It's putting in the time and the effort to find a product or a service or a solution to something that people are struggling with, and getting out and helping those people accomplish what they're trying to accomplish. And when you do that and it catches enough eyeballs, then you start seeing the success in whatever you happen to be promoting, or putting out there for consumers to consume.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's all about stories too, like you said. And stories. When I was on Australian TV, they were saying, it's interesting when some people hear PR, they think of, prefabricated stories, And I like to think I'm the opposite of that because I only take on things I truly actually do believe in. And I think everybody most people believe in their product. They wouldn't be doing what they're doing if they didn't believe in themselves, believe in their product, believe they have something good to offer. So that's what it all comes down to: is if you actually believe that, then you have a message that you need to get out to the world, and you have to be strategic, confident, number one, and then also strategic in your reaching out to media, because they're not in the business of giving you free advertising. And even if what you're doing is absolutely amazing and groundbreaking, they're very differential between advertorial and editorial. So when you're reaching out, you have to make sure that the editor's job is to give his audience something that he would be remiss not to tell that story. You want to make him worried that if he doesn't tell the story, they're going to hear about from somebody else and wonder why they didn't hear about it in that paper, kind of thing. Although he's not doing you any favors. It doesn't matter how good their relationship is with the publicist and the editorial. We still have to be giving them something that they need. That's our job. In terms of their eyes, our job is to vet a product and service and present it in a way that it is news, so that entrepreneurs who don't always have that understanding of what the editor is looking for aren't just kind of cutting themselves off at the foot. But I mean, I'm all about doing it yourself. I started myself. So I'm not saying go out and you have to get a publicist. You can absolutely do what I did for myself and for Jimmy Dennis, and since then what I've been doing for other clients, by yourself, if you want to put the time and effort into learning about who the people are in your community that you need to reach out to, really learning how to write a strategic pitch, where they understand that it's information that they need to give their audience, not where you're just asking for a free ad. So there's a lot of strategies, but I mean, absolutely, there's a world of media now, from podcasts to mainstream media. And, and in today's world, if you're not making yourself a thought leader, speaking out, you're falling behind because other people in your industry are. So you need to find ways to differentiate yourself and to make yourself the brand also, no matter what you're doing.
That's crucial advice. And one of the things I know in the pitches that I've done in the past is, especially if you're going into print media or any type of media, you want to make it where, especially if you're submitting something to a reporter, you want to make it, and I love the analogy you said, that they will feel horrible if they didn't run this story, but also you make it to the point where they don't have to do all the work.
Absolutely key.
They may reword some things so it's in their their own voice. So because I know some writers are very specific on that, others aren't, but some are, where they're like, okay, I want to take this story, but I'm going to reword this in the style that that writer typically writes in. But if you give them the meat of what they need, it makes it a lot easier, because reporters, especially with the internet, it's always been bad, but with the internet, they get hundreds, if not
Absolutely.
thousands, of emails every week.
And they don't have time to write a feature on everything or be. So
Yeah.
yeah, you're so right. I've often said, we need to spoon feed the media. And I've actually learned that even and it's funny because my press releases have always been, and they're very successful, have always been almost somewhat articly, a bit longer and a bit more articly in format than a traditional press release. I mean, obviously the same format, but in terms of the content, I always make sure I have some good quotes there, that because I understand if they don't want to interview the client, if they can't do that, if they can't take time to research, they can just, lift from the release. And I've actually seen when that, my entire press release being lifted with the for immediate release taken off, and then they just remove the byline and it just runs as the article, and that's great. I don't mind that because it's my exact messaging for my client. Perfect. So what I learned from that is what you're saying is also beyond the press release is the press release, and then you can also give them a royalty-free article, and that can be key too. So you have a publicist write an article, or you can write like an op-ed and submit that. And an op-ed is one thing. A royalty-free article could be something completely different, where you're actually like the writer writing it. In that case, you should not be self-promotional. You're not writing about your company. Like, for example, I'm sitting outside, I'm looking at grass. Say you had a lawn mowing company. It's not, glamorous, but let's just say it was a lawn mowing company, and you needed to differentiate it from the other lawn mowing companies. You wouldn't. That's what you would do exactly. You wouldn't. I lost my train of thought there for a minute. I'm so sorry. What was I saying?
Mowing the lawn and lawn company, and you were talking about.
There's an example. I was using that as an example for some reason. Oh my goodness.
It'll come back to you.
It'll come back to me.
It'll come back to you. Yeah, 3 a.m. or something. It'll pop up,
Yeah.
and I can put it in the show notes. Tracy.
I'll rewind and I'll watch it, and then I'll be like, oh man, you know what? Get me back on for 5 minutes. I can,
There you go. There you go. Yeah. So
Right.
So someone approaches you and they're like, okay, I need some, PR help regarding their brand, or, maybe they've got a product or a service or a new book coming out or things like that. What are some of the things that makes it easier for you to be able to help them? Because I'll oftentimes just say, well, what can a PR person do for me? It's like, no, you want to make it easy for anybody that you work with to be able to work with you. So what are some things that makes your job easier to be able to craft a story and get it into the eyes of the media and audiences to run with the story?
Well, in terms of crafting the story, talking to the client, I mean, what they present to you originally is always interesting, and you're like, oh, I can see, all kinds of strategies. And then I find when I actually get on the phone with them for an hour and talk to them, where those little other bits of their life come up, or they'll say something as an aside, and I'll jump on it, and that will start to paint the whole picture. So generally, people in the modern world, and like you said, social media, everything is we can see each other. And people want to work with people or businesses or brands that resonate, or at least I think I do, and a lot of people do, resonate with them and their ethics or how they see the world. And so that's important. So the first thing I do is find out who that client is, what their goals are, even if it's just a business client selling a widget, what their goals are, why do they come to widget selling, not just the product itself, but who they are. So for example, I have one client, it's a brand called Mellow Fellow, Ashley Richards, it's out of Florida, and it's in the cannabis space. They don't sell cannabis. She's a Rastafarian woman, and it's like basically they sell, instead of blunt or rolling paper wraps, they sell eco-friendly, vegan, whatever. So here's a great story. Australian TV had a business show. Cannabis is not legal in Australia, and they had a business show about innovative brands. This is certainly an innovative brand. Like, this is like a disruptive kind of brand in the space, right? Like actually a business story. So I pitched to their business story, which is looking for disruptive kind of brands. The host loved it, but the morning of the interview, the producer looked through it and they said, oh, cannabis isn't legal in Australia, so I don't think we can do it because we can't be promoting, smoking cannabis, even though that wasn't the intent of the story as I saw it. But they said, well, we can get away with it if we talk about, using it for tobacco. And I said, it's a 4 million person audience. And I said, no, absolutely no, because it's the whole point of the brand. We don't need that audience. The whole point of the brand is it's supposed to be clean, GMO friendly, it's a healthier alternative, all that. It is not for tobacco. We don't want to be, I would not want to be not genuine, and neither does that brand, right? To lie about who they are. So I suggested it, great PR save that I'm happy with. It's not about that product. We're not just selling the product. Asha has a story. Asha Richards, the founder, this Rastafarian woman. She can speak on, why don't you present it as, she can speak on a woman in the emerging, in the emerging cannabis industry, how it is to be a woman, a Black woman in that space. She can speak on what she calls the misappropriation of Rastafarian culture in the previous cannabis, world, and how she's trying to present a different vision. So I said that, and this is like a half an hour before the interview. We almost had lost the interview, and the host was like, "Oh, we can do that." And I said, "Because it's legalization is coming up in New Zealand and your part of the world. I know medical recently in the fall, so she can speak to that. So have her. The point of it is have the person on, not the brand. They had ixnay. They could not talk about the brand. We were going to lose a 7-minute interview, international interview with a 4 million audience. And I said to my client, we lose it, forget it. And my client's like, okay, it sucks. And then I said, hold on, reframe it. Interview her as an expert in the industry. While you're doing that, they still mention the brand for like a whole minute because they had to in order to tell her story and why she's an expert. So I'm pretty proud of that one, and being able to reframe it so it's appropriate for their particular audience. And that's a perfect example of what you have to do, where the strategy comes in. Otherwise, we could have said, oh, I guess we can't do that, and the interview's gone. I'm disappointed that, left them with an empty spot in their show that they had planned. And my client loses that audience. Otherwise, now instead we got to educate Australia on something that's important to her, also present her as a leader and a speaker, which is, I think, more powerful than just saying, hey, here's this awesome brand, which is an ad you could buy.
Well, it's great for her too, and congratulations on that save, because what that means for her is, like you just said it, now it's positioning her as a speaker. So that means she can go and speak on, her story, as well as the benefits of, the non-GMO, the vegan, and all of
Exactly.
that stuff that people are really interested in across the globe, because people want to be healthier. And the fact that she is, speaking internationally, is a huge thing, because it gives credibility. And I think
Absolutely.
that's really crucial when you're trying to reach out to the press, is you have to say, look, yes, I have a story, but I also have credibility in what I'm talking about or the work that I'm doing in. And here's the body of evidence of why I have credibility. Because, and you know this, and maybe our listeners may not, but once you start getting featured in press, whether it's television, print, radio, podcast,
Podcast. Yep.
wherever, other shows use that as basically a vetting. And they go, okay. And they can, and beautiful thing is they can read it instantly or listen to it pretty instantly. So they can go, okay, this person knows what they're talking about. Yeah, we can do it. So it cuts out the extra, 2 or 3 or 4 interviews before the interview kind of thing.
Right,
And
and not only knows what they're talking about, because like there's a lot of not publicists, there's a lot of experts across fields who are brilliant at their work, right? But are they good in front of the camera? Those are two different things, right? Really two different things. Do they give good interview? Can they impart that knowledge that they have in a 2-minute or a 10-minute interview?
exactly, and that's the thing, is being, really honed in on the talk. And that's another thing that I'm sure you help your clients with, is doing a podcast interview is a lot different than doing a radio interview or a morning television interview or anything like that. That you got to understand, okay, what playground am I in?
Mm.
And how are my answers supposed to be? Am I supposed to give, quick 60-second responses, or can I talk about this for 2 or 3 minutes?
And know the audience, yeah. And
And
don't rant like
knowing
Tracy does sometimes. I try to.
you haven't ranted yet, so we're good. And I've had many people rant on this show, and I have no problem with it. We keep this organic and real. That's the key thing.
Well,
And
that how did you become a publicist question? It's always a long answer if I give the real answer, because most publicists don't have that trajectory. Well, I started by helping this guy on death row.
yeah, exactly. No, usually it's like I wrote for the school
Yeah,
paper in grade
I did that
two.
too. I forgot. I guess I'd started
Yeah,
there too.
exactly. Funny. I have an award from my elementary school of a writing award. I forget what grade it was, but I have it somewhere in storage. I should probably frame it behind me. It's
Good,
like
you were a writer. I just
I
found a
was
picture of when I was 11. And I said I was a writer then too, because I
yeah,
remember sitting there writing fiction, vampire
yeah,
stories, but whatever.
yeah. No, and it helps, and it's a good skill, even if your career path takes you in a variety of different directions. It's one of those things where the skills and the accountability to write are transferable to other things that you do in life, and it's helped me out tremendously in a variety of different ways.
Communication in general is like the number one skill in the country.
Exactly, and so many people lack it. Or their version of communication is a little
Yeah,
interesting to say the least. Yeah, we won't get into that conversation too much, but so
for another
uh,
day.
in in closing, what are a couple things that you want people to do when they really want to come to you for press release? And I know we talked about how to help you and stuff, but what are some common mistakes you see people doing when they're like, okay, I want to have a press release about this? What are some things that you've noticed over your career?
Definitely somewhere that with on the with this on the business side of things, specifically like entrepreneurs, where you've had to really educate them and to explain to them about, even when they have something extremely innovative, something that is of like I had a client that had a product, entrepreneur specific, something that truly was of interest to any entrepreneur, like that if they heard it, it would literally be like, oh man, I need to know about that. However, that's different from whether the editorial still thinks buy an ad, wasn't a news story editorial. And because of my, reputation in the industry and stuff, I was frustrated with this one particular story. I thought, man, it's such a good story. Why can't I place it? I literally messaged a few, people will sometimes help you if you ask them for help, right? And I messaged some of the busy editors, like the head editors of the financial press, the newsrooms in Toronto. And two of them called me back, and we had 45-minute conversations where they would yeah, and they actually went through with me going, yeah, you know what? Like, it's true. Like, you got everything here. Good quote, good story, good thing. But you know what? You got to understand, there's nothing I would change, but like I myself have 18 stories that I want to place in the next 2 weeks, but I can't because my space is 2 pages and a half of that is taken up by, ads. Right? So the business press especially has changed extremely. So you can be super creative. If you're putting out a press release, you're going to get that out there for SEO or whatever, but don't expect, to get mainstream media interviews on just because you're doing something innovative. It has to be super disruptive, and then you have to have a publicist who's really strategic at getting it there, because that's one, the business press is something that is even harder to crack than entertainment press or, lifestyle press or other things like that, because they know that you're there to make money. That's the point of your what you're doing. So they are too. So they want you to buy an ad. So unless you can really truly convince them that it's not, but I mean, I do it every day, and I get clients placed every day, and that's where the pitch comes in. That's where looking at it, where you don't just say, hey, look at this new product, but you say, as you said, look at this expert who can speak. So that's one thing. You bring me a product, it's going to be a hard sell to get you a story about it. So then I sell you as the speaker, you as the expert, in the field, like I did with Asha, talking about whatever in the industry that you legitimately can talk about, that you are an expert on. But get your head away, like I'll say to my client, get your head away from, there's going to be a feature article about your paper or about your product. It's going to be a story either about you, if you're lucky with that mention, or you might just be one of 3 experts. Well, that's what I was saying. In closing, with the lawn thing. So if
Hmm.
you have, so if you have a lawn thing, say you were right. Remember I was saying about writing an article, like a royalty-free article instead of just doing a press release. If I'm a lawn company owner and I want to place my article about lawns, I don't just write an article about how my company is the best solution for lawn care and blah 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 blah. No, what I would do is write an article about something in the industry that people don't know. Write about maybe this new chemical or whatever lawn care issue there is that the general public might want to know about. You know, if I'm the one writing it and I'm the expert, then I'm not quoting myself. I'm just like writing the editorial and quoting other people. But if I was going to have a publicist, like if I'm writing that for my client, the lawn care company, I'm going to write a general article about lawn care issues in Toronto and blah, blah, blah. It'll mention 3 different things. My client will be quoted in it as an expert primarily. He'll be the big client. He'll be the one in the big letters, you know, with all this stuff. And then I'm going to go find 2 random, you know, experts in the field that aren't related to me, that aren't my clients, that aren't paying me. I'm going to get a quote from them on something that they're not going to be competitors to my client. They'll be like, you know, something else in, like if my client, you know, does the lawn, there'll be a person that does shrubs but can speak on what the lawn guy does or something. So I'll get 2 other experts that aren't paying me for it to quote in that article, to make it a legit news article where my client is just one of the people, experts being quoted. And then they might only be a third of the article, but they get that credibility of being quoted as that expert in, you know, whatever, a major industry publication or a mainstream news or whatever. Then we can build on that, as you said.
That's good, and I'm thrilled that you
Remember.
finished the lawn care story. I would have lost sleep. It's like, what did Tracy mean about the lawn care? Like, yeah, no, it could have gone all kinds of different directions. So
So sorry.
it's not,
That was
no,
my
it's good.
story.
No, it's good. No, I appreciate it. So, Tracy, I've loved our conversation today. Where can people find out more about you and this incredible work that you're doing?
Thank you so much. So TracyLamourie.com, TracyLamourie.com. Right now, it's just pointed to my Instagram as my amazing web people are revamping it all. We just incorporated. And so my site is, you know, you see I do different crazy things every day, and my site has not caught up with me. So we're getting that relaunched. And in the meantime, they can find me on Instagram, Tracy Lamourie, PR Media, and again, Lamourie. Hopefully you'll spell that for them, PR Media. Or I live on Facebook, just Tracy Lamourie. And yeah, I'm happy to hear about I will never be too busy to hear about fascinating, interesting projects in terms of, I love getting, you know, really interesting people. And sometimes it's the people that are interesting in their story and they don't know they're fascinating, but just reach out and, you know, I'm happy to talk to you about getting you some mainstream media attention and getting people to know more about you.
That's awesome, and I'll definitely have that in the show notes. So, Tracy, thank you again for the work that you're doing and for connecting, and I look forward to keeping in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your work as well.
Thank you.